Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you the right path to take. So here goes my story, how I was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a mother, and turned my life into something I never dreamed of when I was a child. My ups, my downs, my trials, my tribulations, and my recovery today. I am 45 years old, mother of 3 amazing kids. I have 4 grandkids, and I can honestly say that it wasn't my dream as a child to have struggled with addiction for 28 years. I went from alcohol to cocaine and moved on to speed, then crank, then up to crack, and ended with meth, 28 years of destroying my happiness. My sobriety, my family, my marriages, and my ability to have a life outside of 4 walls of jail and rehab. But today, family, I celebrate 1 year, 7 months, and 21 days clean. And I'm standing here in front of you today, ready to share with you my testimony to show you all that recovery is possible. Here we go. In my addiction, my life was crazy compared to what a normal child would have, because I fought my addiction for 28 years, an addiction that kept me high and drunk sun up and sundown. Sun up to sundown, 365 days a year for 28 years of my lifetime. I lied, I cheated, I was abused mentally, physically, and emotionally, and verbally, all by the time I was 14 years old. My childhood was amazing. I was raised with both parents, but at the same time, my dad was an alcoholic, who was also a weekend dad due to his work schedule, who kept him out of town all the time. That had us moving from every few years and having him only as a weekend dad. Every few years, my oldest brother was an alcoholic and a pothead. My middle brother joined the Army at the age of 17. And my third brother, who was only 3 years older than me, was our wild child. Also the first to introduce me to alcohol and take me to my first party. My life completely changed when we moved to Spur, Texas. I met my first husband at the age of 13. Within a year of knowing him, he had raped me, and because of my age and me not knowing what was going on, and I had never been in a date before in my life, he told me everything was okay, that he had never raped me, that I was fine. So after 2 months go by, guess what? I'm 14 and pregnant with my first child. Push come to shove, I was 15 with a 6-month-old, married to a man who I thought was the man of my dreams. By this time, he had abused me mentally, but more physically and emotionally, for 7 years. I did this daily. I had 3 miscarriages, but not before I had my first daughter at the age of 18. And not before I went from alcohol daily to coke, then to move up the line, later on to meth. I finally was able to divorce this man to get married to my second husband in 2002. After 2 weeks of knowing him, we decided to get married. I had already moved on up to speed and even more alcohol by this time. Maybe 10 years with him after drugs and alcohol also came cheating, lying, fighting, jail, and me pregnant with my youngest son at the age of 31. But not for my husband, as I had cheated on my husband with another man after partying daily, sleeping with men, and also, did I mention, I got my first DWI in 2002. I met my third husband in 2009, and here I am 3 kids later with a younger man, who I hardly knew, but we got drunk and high together, so I thought everything was perfect. Keep in mind, I'm 16 years old. I am 16 years into my addiction, gradually moving on up even further into my addiction, and losing all my faith in God. Because I was in such a bad place, but couldn't get free of my addiction. Because if I did, I would lose yet another husband. I had 2 teenagers and 1 2-year-old when I met my third husband. I thought everything was perfect because he was so good to my son, but people do change in their addiction. I had changed in my addiction, definitely. Changed for the worse. The great mother I was introduced, as a great mother that I thought I was, I introduced my 16-year-old to methamphetamine. For the first time, wow, right? By this time, my son was taking anything he could do to alter his mood. Because not only was my life miserable, but I had destroyed theirs. and didn't care much less or notice that I was destroying our path to happiness. One night my son came home pretty late at night, went into his room. When I went to see what was going on with him, to see what was wrong with my son, he was hardly breathing, hardly moving, and not saying a thing to me, but his eyes were back in the back of his head. I called 911 and he was transferred to Lubbock. But on the road in Lubbock, my son had stopped breathing twice. Yes, he died on the way to Lubbock. When we finally got him to the hospital, and that the doctors had to fill him with charcoal to get everything out of his system. And as I was sitting next to him, a man walks in, and guess who it is? CPS. Due to a call that a friend of mine had so-called did 2 weeks before that night, came back to see me once again just to tell me, I'm taking your 2 younger kids away from you. You are not a fit mother. So needless to say, we moved away to Snyder to get cleaned up and get our kids back. 6 months later, we did what we had to. But we also started using again. After 12 years of marriage, of cheating and fighting and our addiction, together, me and my third husband were pretty heavily into our addiction. He had got locked up along with my oldest son. They had both went to TDC. I was home with just my youngest son to only destroy his life because the drugs had ruined my life. They had ruined my family, my relationship with my daughter, my only daughter. So I couldn't even see my grandkids at this time. I lived at my husband's home, no running water, no electricity. It was cut off at least every other week. Working endless jobs on weekends and mowing yards to make ends meet. You could say I hit rock bottom at this point. All my money was going to my husband and my son who were in prison, so I decided to start using drugs. Not just to have dope in my hand, but to send money to my kid and my husband. By this time, my mother-in-law was tired of me and all my choices I had made. My husband was hearing my name in prison for being a dealer, and the cops were onto me and what I was doing out here in the free world. I had got called CPS on me one more time. And this time I lost my son, my 2-year-old. Well, he was 8 at the time. At this point in my life, I was ready to go with the good Lord. I had already lost my oldest brother in 2005, no husband, my oldest son in prison, my youngest son living in Spur. My daughter wouldn't talk to me. I couldn't see my grandkids. I couldn't see my parents because that's where my youngest son lived at. And my daughter still would not have anything to do with me. So in my head, I said, why do I continue to live? Why should I be here? I was so angry, so depressed, so alone, and a drug addict who was at her lowest point. I felt there was no God. What God would let someone hit rock bottom? Why should I fight when the devil has won? God was punishing me for the choices I had made in my path. I took the path of destruction. In 1993, when I picked up that first drug, was the day I opened the doors to hell and God. 20 years of drugs, sex, lies, stealing, and 3 marriages later, I stand in front of you today and can tell you it got better. But that's a lie. By this time, it just got worse. You're going to ask me how. How can it get any worse than that? One day I was driving home from work. My husband is at home getting high like there was no tomorrow. He was even worse off than the day before he went to prison, because the day he got home, I decided I wasn't ready to stop, even though he had 6 months clean under his belt. I decided, why do I have to stop? I'm not on probation. I'm not in trouble. I have no reason to stop. So when I was coming home from work, I got pulled over. Well, guess what? I had no driver's license. Bag full of dope, and needless to say, this is the day I got my first felony in 2018. The same year I found out my dad had lung cancer, and my mom was in the early stages of dementia. I am now 41 years old at this time and facing prison time with no kids in my life, no grandkids, no family. All the money we made went directly to our drug dealer. A year later, I went to court in 2019 to be put on probation for 3 years. Yeah, I thought to myself, it's going to be easy. In 2020, I walked in for my first review and got 2 UAs, which I failed both of those at the same time. When I got to my probationer's office, I was told, come in Monday next week, you have no choice but rehab. all I could say was I didn't have a drug problem. My only problem is people like you and your cops in my life. And in my business, needless to say, they didn't agree with me. But guess what happened? God happened finally.
Amen.
All right.
God finally got a hold of me, guys, and took me under his wing.
Yeah.
I ended up in jail for 10 days after failing my third UA to be released to Journey Recovery Center for 30 days in San Angelo, Texas, where I lived there and was introduced to 28 strangers, 28 women that I had never met a day in my life. From then on, I was told when I could eat, when to sleep, when to watch TV, when to go to class, and when I could smoke a cigarette. And all this during the time of COVID, of course, so no visits from family. My kids or my husband, just me and these ladies who were all battling the same as me, the addiction I had, CPS, probation violations. Who knew we would be so much alike? So some women are looking at prison time while others are looking at losing their kids for the rest of their life. Some of us had no home to go to, no jobs, but what helped us was all being a family. After all, we had all the same state of mind. Who knew we all had one thing in common? We all love to be high. But here I am today to share my story with you and let everyone know recovery is possible.
Amen.
I went on to be baptized again on April 18th of 2021.
Yeah.
I was saved once again by Christian Fellowship. God had won me back, guys. He got me back.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I'm sorry. A few days, where I lost my place real good. Sorry, hold on 2 seconds. Okay, God, first weekday you went to see me. Okay, here it is. I went on to be baptized April 18, 2021. I was saved once again by Christian Fellowship. God had won me back. And these ladies were going to see us at rehab. But during the first week, they went to see me as they convinced that my God forgave me, and it was time for me to forgive myself. Yeah. And give our God the chance to lead me in the right path. So I went on my journey to recovery. I left there clean and serene 30 days later. I completed nurturing parenting classes, seeking safety classes, understanding and reducing anger to complete the program at JRC on May 7, 2021. Little did I know I was coming home to all the same thing I had left before, 30 days before that, with my husband telling me this whole time he was clean and serene, but he wasn't. Moving on with my story, August 14, 2021, we renewed our vows, so I believed a new start, fresh start, new beginning. To find out he was still heavy on his addiction, so I was still fighting the devil daily. And did for a year until May 2022. I had to leave that marriage because when I asked him, "Are you ever going to stop using drugs?" And his response to me was, "Why should I?" I didn't want to lose my recovery, my family, my new me. On April 6, 2022, I held my father's hand as he took his last breath and lost his battle to his cancer. My mom's dementia has gotten worse, and dealing with a husband with an addiction, the dreams had started, guys. The using dreams. The long nights, the sleepless nights, because my husband was not next to me like a normal husband should be. As I left him, my son had finally been released from prison and was able to be with my father on his last month before he passed on. Oh, and hey, did I mention to you, my son today celebrates 16 months free of addiction.
Yeah.
He has changed his life around because I have. Because see, if you follow the right path, then our children will as well. I can say in my addiction, I didn't care for anyone. My attitude was hateful. I was always angry. And I could care less who I stole from to get my next fix. I cheated. I had lost my kids because I couldn't and wouldn't put the pipe down. And it took me 28 years to realize what I had given up to stay high. I don't have friends right now, but I do have family.
Yeah.
My addiction took 3 of my marriages from me. Time with my father, my mother, and my kids. I had problems with grief, my attitude, and my codependency, anger, and frustration that I wouldn't attend church, I wouldn't attend family functions, or even leave the doors, or even leave my bedroom. One day I came to see my son at jail, where he was at it for his last time. And I came across one of God's warriors who brought me into the doors of CR. Took them more than one invite, but of course, 3 to come to CR. And it was not my first choice, as for I started at the doors of NA, where my first sponsor, Gypsy, helped me in every way possible, and still does. But finally, after the 3rd invite, I came to CR. And I know the reason and why I wouldn't come to CR. The devil had a hold on me still, no matter what I tried to do. But here I am today, a few months later, and I am now a co-leader for CR in Snyder, Texas. I have worked my steps. I still have a few going, of course, but I'm working on them daily. And I owe a big thank you to Max and Augustine for bringing me here today, and to my CR sponsor, Melissa, for holding me accountable and holding my hand every time I needed her at my side, and not letting me leave Celebrate Recovery. As I have gotten stronger in my recovery, I have gotten stronger in my faith. Amen. I see how much the enemy influences people to do so wrong. But my God is overpowering him daily, because our God knows I need him more than anybody else. Yeah. I am grateful to be walking the right path, as it reads in Romans 6:16. Don't you realize you become the slave of whatever you choose to obey? You can be a slave to sin, which leads you to death, or you can choose to obey God, which leads you to righteous living. Yeah. Work in these programs has helped me to stay clean and serene for over 20 months now. Has helped me gain knowledge, faith, and love, and to trust others in the program, in my church, in my family, or in my life. I run NA meetings in Snyder, Texas as well. Outside the I go to CR, I run NA classes, I attend church every Sunday. I also run the ABL department for my church to become part of my walk. I was able to attend my very first walk September 15, 2022. I celebrated my 45th birthday with all 3 of my kids, Amen. With my church family, and other young men and women who call me mom to this day. And you know why? Because I am clean and serene. Needless to say, my favorite step has gotten to be step 1. Admitting I am powerless over my addiction and impulsive behaviors. That our lives have become unmanageable because before March 25th, 2021, I always said I didn't have a problem. I was hurting everyone in my path, and now I know it was intentional and destroying those in my life. But with this step, I am here today to admit to my addiction, my lack of knowledge, my lack of faith, my trust and lack of love. So to you newcomers, keep coming back. It works if you work it. Yeah. I share this message with others daily as I share my testimony daily and enjoy the life decisions I have made in my recovery. I sponsored 4 ladies. I got to join my first NA convention in Corpus Christi, Texas. Meet new people I had previously met on Zoom meetings in person. I've gotten closer to God as time has gone on. I read my Bible twice a day, write down scriptures that hit a piece of my life or a big piece of my heart and remind me what I need to remember. I want to thank my sponsors, my accountability sponsors, my sponsees, my kids, my grandkids, for standing at my side and keeping me on the right track, for cheering me on every time I hit a milestone. Yeah. And bring me back up when I'm down, or sending me to a meeting when they feel I need it. I hate to see others struggle, but I am not here to judge anyone. But I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, so can you. Yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. Because 1 year, 7 months, and 27 days clean, after 28 years of addiction, can prove to you recovery is possible. Just take it one day at a time, 1 moment at a time, 1 minute at a time, or 1 second at a time. But just keep coming back. If you fall, get back up again and try again, because recovery is awesome and a true blessing from the greatest man I know, our God. Mm-hmm. Thank you again for letting me share my testimony and continue to help others on the right path. Thank you again to Texas Avenue CR for inviting me here today to share my story. Thank you to Texas Avenue Baptist Church. Thank you.